What's going on, beautiful people? David Schiele, Cory, Mose. Welcome back to Game Day Grace. And joining us on the Believers Bench today is somebody who is so important to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they do not throw passes. They don't catch passes. They don't kick field goals. They don't make tackles. But it is the team reporter, Casey Phillips. And if anybody's a Buccaneers fan, you know exactly who this is because she is now on season 10 of being the Buccaneers reporter. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, David, don't you cover the Bucs? I do cover the Bucs, but I'm not the Bucs reporter. So, Casey, thank you for joining us. And if you could, just fill us in on exactly what it means to be the Bucs team reporter compared to, you know, what people are used to with like local media covering the Buccaneers.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love any chance I get to talk sports and faith. That's just like the ultimate, right? The ultimate combo here. So yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, being a team reporter, it's evolved a ton over the years, you know, that I've been doing it, like you said, 10 years here. And then I was a team reporter at 2 different teams before this. So it's been my whole career, and it's evolved and changed a lot, basically due to the nature of just content changing all the time, right? Of, you know, the idea of social media and YouTube and websites and all of it. So the big difference in what we call kind of outside media versus inside, of course, is that I'm kind of an extension of like the PR and marketing team as well. We're like, I'm not necessarily going to be your hard-hitting news person. I'm not breaking news of trades or injuries or things like that because I got to wait for the team to do it. And of course, I'm always going to be doing things from a positive spin. And that's kind of the difference, which for me, faith-wise especially, was really great. That I always knew I was going to always get to be positive. I was not going to be having to dig up dirt on people, like no rumors, no gossip, no none of that. Like it just felt like a way to be like really wholesome in my coverage of teams and get to essentially just be a fan of the team like everybody else. And so it's my job to not only talk about the X's and O's, which I love doing, but the biggest part of it is the human side and the off the field side and getting to show everyone who the players are, the coaches are, the whole organization, that I feel like I've done my job if people walk away saying, I'm going to root for that guy on Sunday. I want to buy that guy's jersey because of a story or an interview I've done.
Yeah, you spoke about having the faith part of it being a little bit more easier to do when you get to do positive spins on things. Was there a certain moment in your career when you kind of noticed, man, I would rather be this route so I don't have to face those barriers or roadblocks when it comes to having to do like the prototypical digging up dirt that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and also I want to say for sure that like, you can be a really strong, amazing Christian in any kind of a role and a job and all of that. Absolutely. But I did feel like there was a point where I knew, especially like I wanted to be able to invite, you know, players to church. I wanted to be able to pray for, you know, guys, have them come to Bible study. And I'm like, man, if I have just put out this really negative, potentially story about somebody, and then I'm like, hey, do you want to come to church with me? I feel like they're going to be like, what the, like, are you kidding me? Get out of here. And it just felt like an easier way to have that rapport with everyone, where like the faith part was the most important part to me. So I care a lot more about that than whatever my, you know, job title is or my level of prestige or any of that kind of thing. And also by being a team reporter, I'm just around so much more than outside media, that they're brought in just, here's your X amount of locker room time, here's your podium. And it's not always the easiest time to really get quality discussions with anyone on the team. You have to be really strategic about it. Whereas for me, you know, I'm in the dining hall, I'm in the hallway, I'm at every event, I'm just around so much more where I meet their families. I just feel like a lot more a part of the team. And that felt like it broke a lot of the barriers down that would let me have those important conversations with everyone.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So now I am wondering, I see the Brady jersey in the back. Did he sign that for you personally? Is that where that came from, that relationship?
Yes and no. It was signed for my husband personally by me as a wedding gift, which I think makes me wife of the year.
Yeah. Of the decade.
Yes. So it actually, I gave it to my husband on our wedding day. And so it actually is, Brady signed it, wishing him, you know, good luck and all that kind of stuff as a wedding gift from us. So I'm actually in my husband's office right now. So he loves having this as his background on all of his Zooms and all of his stuff, that he gets to flex on that a little bit.
That's cool. That's cool. What would you say then is your favorite piece besides that of memorabilia that you have from the Buccaneers since you've been with them?
Well, I mean, the Super Bowl ring, that's kind of hard to beat. So
So you got a ring.
I did get a ring. I did get a ring.
Wow.
It was pretty, another perk of working for the team, let me tell you. So yeah, I got a ring and it's personalized, has my name on it. It's sized to my finger, all of that. So it was pretty crazy, which of course it was ironically, I got it like a couple months before my husband proposed. And I remember he said, he was just like, man, what am I supposed to do now that she has this Super Bowl ring? Like they are upstaging me here. And he was laughing. He's like, how am I supposed to live up to this? This thing's got like 1,000 diamonds on it.
Oh,
Yeah, that's not
man.
fair. That's not fair at
Yeah,
all.
that's not fair. That's cool though. That's really cool. Now, you mentioned I've seen something before that said you really started taking your relationship with God seriously sometime around high school. I wanted to know how that went for you, how that process was, and how you kind of came to that decision to follow Christ.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in church. I was a acolyte. I was in Sunday school. I was in youth. I was doing all the things, and I would have always said that I was a Christian. I would have always checked. I would have always, had kind of some of those answers to things. Got baptized when I was 12, but I always say I didn't. I don't know that I really understood fully or really accepted it in my heart of what it meant until I got taken to a youth group event for the first time. And my church was very like hymnals, pews, little old school on all of that front. And I heard contemporary like Christian worship music for the first time. And I saw all these people were like with their eyes closed and their hands raised. And at first I was like, what in the world? Like I was like kind of weirded out by the whole thing, didn't understand what was happening. But I knew all these people from my hometown. I knew they weren't crazy. So I was kind of like, what's happening here? Like, what am I missing, or what are they experiencing? And I just started really listening to the words and what it meant and what would make people react that way. And it just, I mean, it hit me like this bolt of lightning of just this idea of like, God and I have this actual relationship. There's so much love there for me individually, that there was the whole "for God so loved the world," but like that was the moment that I think I understood it was He loved me that much, and the ramifications of that hit me in that moment. And then that was it. I think I was about 15, and then yeah, just never looked back after that.
Wow, that's awesome. I kind of have a similar story as well. It didn't hit me till about college though, but still growing up in the church, got baptized when I was 12 as well. And just didn't see my life change at all, even though I was a great like kid, I had all A's, didn't have detention, but when it comes to the fruits of the labor, there wasn't any fruits. So, when did you kind of start seeing your heart of stone turn to a heart of flesh, and the different like desires that you had of reading the Bible and of course talking to people about God and wanting to invite them to different Bible studies? When did that kind of start to ramp up?
Yeah, I think I was the same as you. I always joked that I was a goody two shoes, and then I was a goody two shoes for Jesus. Like it really, I was. I didn't feel like I necessarily had to do any kind of like massive changes, and like my parents had raised me, which is such like great sense of like morality and integrity that already fits so well with like the life that Jesus calls us to lead. But yeah, the motivation behind it completely changed, and I 100% went 0 to 100 of like I was on fire. And I cannot believe, I look back at this and I'm just like, oh my Lord, what was I doing? But I remember at one point in college, I'm pretty sure I stood in the student union building with like a sandwich board on me that was like, want to talk about God? And now I'm like, I was that person. I was that person. And I think I've honed it a little better since then. I'm a little more nuanced with how I approach things. But yeah, it was just immediate for me of like started reading the Bible right away, started like listening to all these sermons, wanted to go to every church event, everything. It was crazy how even though necessarily my life behavior didn't have to change as much, just my heart for it and all of it, it was such an immediate thing of really wanting to learn a lot more about all of it and realizing how little I understood about the nature of God and all of that. So yeah, it went. And then in college, I was in a Christian sorority and I was the chaplain of it. So that I think is when I took a huge step forward in my understanding of my faith, my learning about it, because I was going to have to give a devotional every week to my sorority. And I mean, I was still a pretty baby, Christian at that point. And I thought, man, who am I to like preach to these women at such a key point in their life? And so I suddenly took it super seriously of trying to learn. And I spent a lot of time on those messages every week. And they always say you don't really know something until you can teach it. And I think that was a key part for me. And I also in college took a New Testament class and a Gospels class at school as some of my electives. And that was huge for just kind of understanding the theology of everything.
All right. Well, as good journalists, we're not going to let you skip past the sandwich board thing. So you're going to have to go back and explain the motivation behind that, how you put it together, and then the results of it. How did it turn out? Yeah, you don't have to tell
I'm
us.
sure you'll be shocked to hear not great. It turned out not great. No, I mean, it was fine. It was, I think I was a part of like Campus Crusade, crew in college.
Yeah, crew. Yeah.
And there was just a group of us who like, we just started trying to like walk around campus and start conversations with people. And now I'm like, I would just have hated us. Like if I were the people on campus, I'm like, oh man, but it was really coming from just such a good place of like just wanting to talk to people and start conversations with everyone. And we did end up having some really great conversations with people. And we also would take food out to, some of the homeless people in downtown and talk to them and provide some stuff for them. So really for us, it was just about like being out around campus and trying to be there for people however we wanted. Again, I think it was not necessarily always the best approach that we could have gone with, but yeah, had some really interesting chats with people, different religions, different backgrounds. And I cannot say that any of it ended with someone being like, yes, you've convinced me. But if nothing else, it was a good experience just to know that, hey, like it's good to sometimes be bold, and who knows the ramifications down the road of the seeds that could have planted. You never know.
And that's what I was going to ask, in the sense of how much is that God preparing you at that moment for what you're doing now to spark those conversations with the athletes, and not being nervous or afraid, but instead having that experience that in college you were bold enough to do it. So of course you'll be bold enough as you gotten older and gotten stronger in your faith.
I like that. I've never thought of it that way, but man, I think that's a great point. I think that's a really cool idea. And I do believe in the idea of God using everything. Everything sets you up for where he wants you to go. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a huge part of that of being willing to do the public speaking, walk up to strangers, talk to anybody, and not be afraid to speak out about who you are and what you're about. So yeah, I think you're probably right, and I never thought of it that way.
So how do those conversations go, though? I'm intrigued because you also want to have the balance, I'm sure, with your job, and not having that overshadow what you're going through your day-to-day basis. But like, how do you kind of find pockets of time to invite guys out to church or to Bible study, or spark conversations about Christ while at the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's and this is where I think it's I'm a little bit better at this now than I was in college, where it's always best in relationship, right? That's always the best way to share your faith is when you have a genuine relationship with someone. For me, I don't even know how much it has to be super intentional. I just view it as like if it's a big part of who you are, as people get to know you, it just naturally happens, right? That it's, even if it's just me talking about the fact of, oh, like, where'd you meet your husband? Well, we met at church. And, in our case, people ask, what does he do? He works for a Christian nonprofit, and being able to bring that up. And, oh, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I went to, church. Or what'd you do I went to a Bible study. It just naturally comes up when it's already a fabric of your life. And therefore it's not you necessarily just shoving it down someone's throat. And then once people know this about you, that can also make it open if they're hesitant, if they're not sure about talking about it, that they know you're someone who is a safe place, to speak about it. And I work really hard for me, what's most important is trying to make sure that my life lines up with that if I am going to be someone who talks about that no one is sitting there like, what? Like shocked. I don't want that to seem like she doesn't seem like that, or the way she talks, the way she acts. So for me, it's like, I don't shy away from it. I make sure that everybody kind of knows that's what I'm about. I put some things on social media, but it's to where it's just an organic overflow of my life. I'm not doing it to put on a show. And then I just try to make sure that all my words, all my deeds back it up, and that people there can tell I care about them as well. So it's not coming from a place of, hey, I just want another notch in my belt of trying to say that I brought someone else to church, or I talk to somebody, that people know it's coming from a place of truly caring about them, and it not being about me, or being able to say, hey, I did this thing. Like that's not what it's about. So I just want people to know I care about them, and then however it can come up naturally and organically, that's really the key.
That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, to be able to do that. And I'm glad you brought up the point of, hey, the fruit has to match. I can't just say, yeah, I'm a Christian, and the fruit doesn't match, because then people are going to be really thrown off, and that's just a bad witness to Christ overall. So I'm glad you brought that point up. I do wonder, because you've had these conversations in college and probably around the Buccaneers facility, Has there ever been a challenge or a question that was brought up that you may have had to go back and do some studying for you to be able to answer it? Because the thing about the faith, and that I've said before, is, well, if it's true, then it should be able to withstand scrutiny. Withstand scrutiny. It should be able to withstand that. And I wonder, for someone who was a chaplain and had these conversations with people of all kinds of different backgrounds, was there any type of skepticism or anything that you faced that you were like, okay, now I need to go study, and this is how you approached it and maybe answered it later on?
Yeah, a funny one was back. I used to work for the Wizards in the NBA, and at one point I was on a road trip, and one of my coworkers, wasn't a Christian and knew I was, and I don't even remember how it came up, but we're just like out at shopping somewhere. He was like, "So what is in the Bible? Like, what's the Bible?" And I was like, "Oh my, that is such a big question." And I was like, "Okay, so Jesus, okay, well, so Abraham, so Adam, oh boy." It was so wild to realize like the need for an elevator pitch in some ways of like, how do we don't got 20 hours right now for me to go through this. So that was kind of funny I think that taught me I needed to have some pre-baked answers to certain things ready to go that were shorter, because again, it's so easy to get too bogged down in all these details of like having kind of the high umbrella answer for people. But I think more recently, I know right before we started the show, we were talking about how Shaq Barrett was a big inspiration for you guys on wanting to do this show. When he lost his daughter, and he just was so amazing at being so outspoken about his faith. And I remember one of my coworkers ended up saying something to me of like, I don't know how he is doing that. And they were like, my big issue with faith has always just been, how could a good God like let something like that happen? And of course, that's most people's probably top question, concern, doubt, whatever, whether they're Christians or not. Most people have at some point asked themselves that question. And I was so thankful that I had done a lot of research on this topic, because I feel like it is something that so many people talk about. And I got to just sit down with the coworker, and I was like, well, here's the thing, like, love requires free will, and free will has meant that people have chosen things that are wrong, and that has caused a broken world. And there's all these ripple effects and ramifications of that. We don't know that. And I said, but to me, the main part of it is, either way, this tragic thing has happened. So not believing in God doesn't fix that or change that. It just means you're hopeless now in this sad situation. But at least when you have a relationship with God and believe in God and think that there's a plan that he can use, and not that God caused this by any means, but that he can use it and bring good out of it, and he can console you and bring you comfort and peace, I don't know why I wouldn't choose that. And so that's my answer to it is, I don't know why this happened, but not believing in God just leaves you even more hopeless and alone in those dark times. Whereas my faith tells me that even in this horrific thing, there will be something out of it that can come, that can be good, and God can in that time bring comfort and peace to Shaq and his family. And the coworker was like, wow, like I've never thought of it that way. And I was so thankful that I was prepared in that moment. And it came from a place even for me of like, I have a couple autoimmune diseases, and one in particular, when it first came on, it was like brutal. And I ended up in the ER, and I remember laying there just not knowing anything about what my future was going to hold, what was going on with me. It was like incredibly scary. And I had this thought of sitting there like, man, I feel like this is one of the moments where people would say like, how could God let something like this happen? That here I'm someone who's been faithful and tried to live my life for him, and now, here I am sitting here. And I thought to myself in that moment, like, but I cannot imagine sitting here not knowing him, not believing in him, and not thinking he has a plan for me and a purpose for me, and like peace and comfort in that moment. Because again, either way, I'm in the ER, whether there's a God or there's not. This situation isn't changing. So why would I not want the option that's going to make me more comforted in that moment?
You just put us some teach tape.
That was
That
so
was
good.
dope.
That was really good. Yeah, we gonna clip that. We gonna go ahead and clip that one.
You see what she said here?
Yeah, like because that was going to be my question to Shaq. That I didn't, because it was day 3 of training camp. Why am I going to ask that? Everybody talking about sack numbers and his Achilles and, know. But I wanted to know, hey, some people are probably struggling to understand how a good guy could let this happen. And for you, this is your family that this is affecting directly. How do you respond to that, knowing that you've been leaning on your faith the whole time? And so to know that you were in the building and that there was that question coming from inside One Buck Place, and then you were just there. God used you in that moment 100%, and you definitely planted a seed. So and that right there is obedience, and we love that. That is amazing. And then I think the other point to that too is there's a tragedy, right? That the fact that a tragedy happened and we see it as negative is an argument for God by itself. Because if not, then you don't have a sense of tragedy or this good thing happened. It's just things happened. There is no good or bad there because there's no standard of good or bad. It's just things happened, and then it wouldn't matter. But the fact that you see it as a bad thing means that, oh, okay, well, if it's bad, then it means there is good. Well, where does that come from?
Yeah, for sure.
So there's that element of it as well. But that is a tough thing. And people are also asking that after Hurricanes Helene and Milton. And I don't know if that's ever come up in the building, but I do think that's one of the things that maybe people are struggling with in this time, because they're like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't a moral evil thing, but this is a natural cause, and it hurt a lot of people. I wonder how you would respond to that, just from your perspective.
Yeah, I would really recommend, one of my favorite pastors in the country, his name's Adam Hamilton, and he's a pastor at Church of the Resurrection in Kansas City. Love his books, love his sermons. He's incredible. He actually did a whole series on a lot of the things that make people question their faith and that make people doubt. And he did one about prayer and, what works, what doesn't, all these things. And he talked a lot about things like natural disasters and, and he's like, I always thought it was interesting that people called them acts of God. That was such an interesting idea that we have this vision of him sitting up there zapping a hurricane into existence to take people out. He's like, that's not how it works. He's like, our God is a God of order. He created the world in a certain way, and sometimes there are just going to be some of these things that happen because of the natural scientific order of how he's created this world. And that, again, we live in a broken world now, that because of our choices and what's happened, and we have no idea what the ramifications of that are, but that in the horrific destruction that comes after things like that even when we don't know why exactly it happened, or maybe we do from just the scientific standpoint, what matters is that then people get the chance to be the hands and feet of God in that moment. And instead of us, questioning always about the why, I just focus instead on the what we're supposed to do now, of what I'm called to do and what's in my control and what's in my power. And that, we pray for miracles, we pray for answered prayer, and that's us. We're the miracle, we're the answered prayer. If someone out there in the wake of these hurricanes is praying for someone somehow to get them diapers, hey, donate to this, help these organizations get to them, and then guess what? Their prayer gets answered, and it was all because of us. So I feel like that's really what I tend to focus on in these moments, is just how do we get a chance to be the hands and feet, even when we don't always understand, the why behind it.
I just think you just keep spitting out heat, and I really appreciate it. I really do.
We gonna have an offering bucket passed around.
I know, right?
Casey, yeah.
I do feel like, man, you causing a lot of change in that facility, not just a locker room, but in the facility. And so, it's funny to hear, not funny, but I guess ironic to hear how Shaq's tragedy then sparked questions about your coworkers' faith when you were able to answer those questions. And to me, how everything kind of coincides with each other just shows me how God has a reasoning for everything. And I just think that's beautiful in that sense, because we always like to have these questions about why things happen, but we don't have the map that he does, right? And so who's to say that conversation with you then spark a more desire to search after God with that? And so how often do those type of conversations come up in the facility? I'm just curious, especially with so much tragedy happening on that side of the nation right now.
Yeah, I don't know that they happen super often. I think it's always interesting. I feel like a lot of times with coworkers, we're all talking about sports. We're all talking about, we're not always in these real deep conversations and all that kind of thing. So it can happen some. And I definitely think that the more you're with your coworkers, the deeper some of the conversations can become as compared to just some of the more just, oh, what'd you do this weekend? So I don't think it's super often, but it does always feel very significant when it does. And I always feel when there is this moment that then I am like, oh man, I don't want to drop the ball. Like it always feels like a lot of pressure and I understand why for a lot of people it's hard. It's a very delicate line to walk. Because again, it's still a workplace. Like I got to be respectful of everyone else's lives, decisions, backgrounds, faiths, everything that like I am always very big on trying to make it just about this is me, this is kind of what I'm about. And I am also so fine with everybody else and what they do. And I never want anyone to feel, judged or like I'm thinking any less of them. And so for me, it's about just making sure that again, everything is about just loving all the people around me and trying to be the best coworker I can be and praying for those opportunities and keeping my eyes open for them as compared to always just trying to kind of force them into existence of, not thinking it always has to be something super overt either. And just instead being there, being available, praying for it, waiting for it, being ready for it when it does happen.
That's big. David, you heard that? Praying for that.
Mm-hmm.
Praying for those conversations to happen. That's crazy. I like that. I like that a lot.
And to be honest with you, that's tough because I'm the type of person that is a little scared of those conversations happening at work.
Same.
Because you don't want to get embarrassed. Like you don't want to get trumped with something. And that's part of the reason why I jumped really hard into apologetics over the last couple of years and did a lot of studying and read books and things like that and am still reading books. So that way I feel prepared for those conversations, but praying for those conversations is like
she want the smoke.
Yeah, that's a hard prayer right there. That's a tough one.
But I think I'm glad you brought that up because I do feel like we put too much pressure on ourselves to have all the answers, right? Like, and I also feel like God doesn't need us to like defend him or put him in any kind of position. It's not like he can't get his stuff done, with or without us. Like we want to be a part of it. We want to be used, but like it's not up to us. Like we can have all the right answers and someone still not respond the way you'd hope they would. We can screw it up completely and they still, again, we're not the person in charge of it. And I think it is very good to do the research, try to be as prepared as possible because that is really important, even just for yourself. Like know why you believe what you believe, know about these things. Don't just have it be something that's said to you. But I also think at the same time, it's less about answers because let's be real, we don't love when someone just tries to like spit facts at us to convince us of something all the time of where that like you can tell they're out to just be like, see, like gotcha, like trying to, like we don't love that and always respond to that super well. I view it more as like the testimony side where it's not about memorizing these theological things. It's not about all of that, which can be good sometimes. It's important to know, but that's why I think it's so much more important to just be able to like be willing to share your story. Cause then that's not this big debate. It's just, like this is what has happened in my life. This is what I've experienced. This is what I've seen. And people can't argue with that. It's just, hey, this is my experience. And then it becomes less you feeling obligated to have every answer in the theological book and more about just, hey, you know what? This is why I believe. This is what I've experienced and how it's changed my life and made my life better. And I think of it even the way we talk about, like, you'll recommend a movie to someone, you'll recommend a restaurant to someone. Like, do you know every bit about how every bit of that food is made and all of it? No, all you know is you're like, look, I went here. It was amazing. It was awesome. Great time. You should go. Like we have this innate thing in us that's like, if I've experienced a good thing, I want you to experience it too. And then that's more powerful than like you having every fact about the restaurant to tell someone you're just like, it was great. I loved it. You should go.
I just got a word from that. Check this out. Y'all know how recently on social media, people have been gatekeeping the restaurant that they like to eat at?
Yeah.
They find some good food and they cover the name. They cover the name of the bag or the food tray. How are we as believers consciously or unconsciously gatekeeping the good news of the gospel or the love that we felt or the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and the things that we've been able to experience in our lives? How many times have we tried to gatekeep that from other people just like people are gatekeeping the restaurants. When, hey, if it's a good restaurant or if it's a good movie or if it's a good TV show, you just say, check this out. Every time I talk to William Golston, he tells me like 3 shows to watch. Like every time I talk to him, he's like, oh yeah, you need to watch this. He said, I just told Levante David to watch this show. You need to watch that one. You need to watch this. He's always recommending stuff. And now I'm just like, wow. And so as you're talking, everything you're saying is ministering to me. I don't know about anybody else, but everything you're saying is ministering to me. I also want to get into this too, because I know that there are other believers on the team. And so what does that community look like for you, for someone who's in the building and gets to be around those people?
Yeah, it's really cool. It's I always love that when I figure out that either a player or a coach or staff member, anyone, is a believer, that like, just know how there's that initial like, oh, let's go. Like, cool. Yeah. Like the Spider-Man meme, like, oh. And so I always really enjoy that. And it does feel like there's just kind of an instant bond. And it was cool for me, actually, just recently I got to have my pastor talk at the team chapel, because they do chapel every night before a game, both home and road. And so especially when I traveled with the team, it's always hard to not necessarily get to go to church like all fall. And so I would go to chapel, and that was just always so life-giving to just be sitting around like with your coworkers, the people that you're around all the time, when like you're not with your friends and family, you're not at church. Like my friends used to joke that I would just disappear for half the year. And that was hard to feel like, I was missing out on a lot of community and a lot of time with people. And to have those other people around the team to experience that with, like, it just felt like a really cool bond and some great conversations. And like, I'm not going to say the name of who this player is, because he made me keep it anonymous, it was very sweet. But one of the Christian players on the team just out of nowhere was like, hey, does your husband's nonprofit need some like sneakers or something for their kids? Like I get some Nike discounts and credit. Like, would you want me to just sit in that? And I was like, yeah, that's amazing. I didn't say anything, didn't ask for anything. Like he just out of the blue was like, let me do that. And I was like, oh, can I tell them it's from you? And he was like, no, I'd rather you not. I'd rather be anonymous, which again, I'm like, of course you would, because that's how we're supposed to do this as Christians, which is so sweet. And it killed me from a journalism standpoint, but from a Christian standpoint, was just really proud and excited. So just moments like that, I'm like, oh, this is lovely.
Has that always been the case with the organization? I know you've been through a bunch of head coaches, and so is that like a head coach thing to have chapel every week, or is that just?
No, I don't know if it's a head coach thing. I think it's a pretty common thing around the NFL. It's just kind of a tradition at this point for everybody, and I don't know exactly who makes the call on how all that goes, but and it's changed over the years of like who kind of runs it. That at one point I think we did have a chaplain, and then at one point we didn't, and then now it's like coaches who our Christians have been kind of the ones to lead it. Like Clyde Christensen, when he was here, I think it was kind of his domain. And then now it's Larry Foote. He kind of takes the lead on it. And then Duke, who's in charge of player engagement, he also helps with it a lot. And so, they bring in pastors from, Tampa to come speak, or when they travel on the road, they'll get a pastor from that city to come in and speak, which is really cool.
Let me find out Larry Foote be preaching.
Oh, Larry Foote, man, let me tell you, that guy loves Jesus, and it is awesome. He will tell everyone about it. Love that guy. He's so fun to talk to, and yeah, he's great.
Is there any particular city that you remember from a chaplain that came in and like, oh, he's fire?
Ooh, that's tough.
Or she?
Well, I mean, from like, this is not theological at all, but when we played in London, just getting to have someone with a British accent, I was like, well, this is fun. This is kind of different. I know that wasn't like a super spiritual answer.
No, but still, I bet it gives perspective though, huh? About like how worldwide, global. Like this thing isn't just a U.S. thing. I think about that in church, and my church that I attend, we sing a lot of songs in Spanish, and so I think that's always like for me, I'm trying my hardest to like pronounce it right. 'Cause I want to respect the culture, but then also I don't want to not speak it just because I don't know the language. I want to try to do it because other people across the country are doing the exact thing right now at their churches in Spain, in Mexico, and stuff like that. So I think it gives me a worldwide view of, man, it's not just our little bubble in the U.S. that celebrates Jesus, but man, everyone does around the country. I mean, around the world. So I bet that London trip got you that perspective.
Yeah, it was cool. I got to go to an event in Miami at one point with my husband, and they had there was both Spanish and English worship going on for the event, because in Miami it was so like the event was so 50-50 split on people and their backgrounds and stuff, and it was so cool because they found a worship leader who could do both, which props to him. I can't sing at all, can't imagine doing it in multiple languages. And he would like lead a verse in English and then lead a verse in Spanish, and it was so cool to be in that room of like both happening at once. And it was just that moment of like, this is what heaven is gonna be like and look like. You know, that when you look around of, you know, all different races and cultures and backgrounds and languages and all of that, I was just like, oh, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, 100%. I went to a random barbershop. So we evacuated from Hurricane Milton.
Well, that's crazy. Risky. That's risky.
It was crazy. It was so
that's
everything.
Worse than the hurricane. I mean,
I evacuated from the hurricane. So we were up in Panama City where it was sunny the entire time. It's like Hurricane Milton just didn't even affect it at all. We up there, and my wife's like, "Hey, you should go get a haircut." I'm like, "All right, so my hair must be bad."
I'm about to say, no way she just said that to you.
I have never and will never say that to my husband.
I was
that
due.
feels like a line you don't cross.
I was due, but it's cool because she knows that I take my hair very seriously.
Okay.
And so she has the right to be like, "Hey, I think you should go get a haircut. Like, I know you've been wearing the do-rag, you've been doing everything you need to do throughout the week, but I think you should actually just go get a cut." All right, cool.
Good time.
So, you know, I go to this barbershop, random barbershop, never been there before, don't know this guy, does not speak very good English, but he is a believer. So he had the verse from John where Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father except through me," but it was in Spanish, had that right there. So it was Juan, not John, on the wall. But he was listening to worship music in Spanish.
Wow.
And it was all the popular worship songs that we hear in America, but in Spanish. I have never heard Yeshua by Jesus Image in Spanish before, but like the passion,
Fire. I bet it
was. Oh my gosh. She was singing with her entire heart, soul, spirit, everything. Like some of the worship music in other languages, man, to be and that's just me being fair. Mind you, I'm going to the Kirk Franklin concert tonight. Okay, Kirk Franklin, Fred Hammond, Yolanda Adams. It's gonna be. I'm gonna be the only person in their 20s in there. It's gonna be number old heads.
Let me tell you, as a geriatric millennial, that concert list just hit my soul. Like that.
Oh yeah.
I was a '90s kid Christian. You just dropped all the names.
Everybody. Yeah. So I can't wait. I can't wait. But I also now have to go look up all of their songs in Spanish. That's what I need to do.
Just in case someone's doing it better. Yeah.
Because I'm like, look, I love Fred Hammond, but somebody might be washing him with his own songs in another language. You never know. You never know. Well, Casey, I do want to end with a little bit of sports. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Both, we were at the game. We saw both go down. Of course, we absolutely hate to see that. What's the energy like? How is the team feeling? Because we're talking about two guys that had the C on their chest just a year ago. So what's kind of the outlook now?
From just the human standpoint, you could feel the heaviness of people just feeling, especially for Chris, people just feeling for him. You know, that it was compounded with Mike also being out, and you're just like, dang, like these are I've heard multiple people use the word heartbeat, that they're the heartbeat of the team. And to lose them both so quickly, and hopefully Mike is, you know, not a super long-term thing, that we'll see how long that takes to get him back. But the Chris one, it was so tough knowing he has just been through a lot in recent years. Lost a family member not too long ago, went through the whole ACL thing, and just has the best heart and is just a great guy. Everyone loves him. I always say that the way you can know that Chris is an awesome guy is the fact that his wife is the daughter of his high school football coach. And I don't know how many people their high school football coach would be like, yep, you can date my daughter. I think that is maybe the best endorsement you can ever have in the history of the world. So I always use that as like, that's how awesome Chris is. And I think people were just sad for him, like just from a friendship standpoint, separate even from what it means for the X's and O's of the team. It was just pretty heartbreaking. And I don't know if y'all saw though, the inspirational thing of like the camera cuts to him getting on that cart, and you can read his lips back to work, John. Like that, John's our trainer. He was sitting there in the cart with, and he's like, all right, let's get back to work. And I was like, oh, that it got dusty in the room for me when I saw that, because I was like, how many people is that what they're thinking in that moment? And even if it wasn't, even if he wasn't at that place, it's totally understandable and would be fine. But God, I mean, just how amazing, and what a way to approach life's challenges is just, all right, back to work, next thing. And I know that's how Chris is going to attack it. And I know he'll come back better than ever because of that, but it's tough in a contract year. It's just hard for him personally and his family, and our heart breaks for him. So definitely praying for him and his family and everybody. And then now, I mean, maybe my least favorite phrase in the world is next man up, because it gets used so much, and it always is a sad thing if you're having to say it. But that's where we're at. And you got some young guys in that receiving room who have been watching and learning from Mike and Chris for years. And this is that moment of, all right, what have you been learning? What have you been watching? And how can you step up in these moments when the team needs you the most?
Yeah, that video, I was going to mention that video, but you knocked it out the park. That gave me a little bit of insight of who Chris is, because I don't follow the team. Heck, my favorite team is the Texans, and so they're not even in the same conference as us. And so just getting that insight of like, man, that guy, one, his heart and his mind is strong to, in that moment, like you mentioned, saying back to work. Most guys will have the towel over their head, probably crying, and which is totally fine. But the fact that he was in that moment thinking, okay, let's move on, let's get this thing popping. That's
Separate
crazy to
from
me.
just the pain he was probably feeling also in that moment, like, what a superhero. Like, what? Like, that's crazy.
Casey, I cannot tell you how much this blessed us. I can't put it into words. I didn't know. I also, the Kirk Franklin, Fred Hammond thing, I didn't know you knew something about that.
Hey, she locked in.
But I didn't know you was locked in
now.
like that. I ain't know. But when she said growing up with the pews and the hymns, I said, I think Casey knows something about something. I said,
Don't
pews and
get it
hymns.
twisted. I know what's up.
Yeah, I said, I think this girl done been around some shouting, bro. This ain't.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm like, she said pews and hymns. I said, all right now.
Yeah.
Not steel chairs and you know what I'm saying? Her parents probably, if you went to a church where you had to park in some grass, then all right. You locked in. You was parking in grass, wasn't you?
Of course. And you're into it. Like, yeah.
There's another way of life? What?
Yeah. Like, what are these parking lots I hear about now?
She locked in. She had the chicken in the fellowship hall with the greens. Yeah.
Wednesday night.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yes,
facts.
bro.
Yeah, that's
the big mama's in the kitchen during service, and you can smell it too. And you would go down there, you would get you one piece of chicken, you get some green beans, and you would get a little roll. That was it. And your mama look at you, don't ask for nothing when we leave here. This your food.
Yeah, we ain't getting that.
So I told you, I did every job that could have been done in my church growing up, including my mom signed us up to be the people who disposed of communion when it was done, because you can't just throw Jesus out. That's not how that works. I remember being a kid and being like, I don't understand what's happening. Well, when it's a sacrament, like, you have to dispose of it. And so I think it was like our church's thing was you like buried the bread and you like poured the wine on the, I don't remember the whole thing, but there was a whole thing. And I remember being so upset as a kid because they used those Hawaiian rolls for communion bread, which is like the tastiest thing in the world. And I was like, why are we getting rid of this? And my mom was like, we can't just eat it. I was like, what? I could not.
Why not?
I could not understand as a kid why we were getting rid of this perfectly good Hawaiian bread. It was so tasty. Like,
that would be thinking the same. That must go crazy. Like, what?
Yo, that bread is fire. And I was like, little, 9-year-old me was like, why are we burying this bread in the dirt? And I did not understand.
Oh my gosh.
Yo,
Yep.
I did not expect to hear that.
You're welcome for that. That was a bonus. That was a little bonus.
Oh my God. That was crazy.
So fact. I can imagine like 10-year-old Casey, like,
yeah,
what are we doing right now, bro?
Like hurt. Like, yo, why? Why? Nah, I would have snuck a Hawaiian roll and I would have got a whooping.
Yeah.
Easy. Yeah, I already know. Like it's whatever.
Oh my
Yep.
God.
I'm already knowing.
Thank you for that so much.
Oh, glad y'all like
Oh
that.
yeah, we got to end it on that one. 'Cause that's mic drop. That's a mic drop.
Oh God.
Oh man, Casey, wow. Yeah, we gonna have Casey back.
Yeah.
Most definitely. We gonna have Casey back, man. That was incredible. Thank you so much for listening, wherever you were listening, whether that was right here on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the conversation and you love Hawaiian rolls, just go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button so you're locked in as a bench warmer, because Casey is definitely going to be sitting on the Believers bench with us again. Most definitely. Until next time, David Schiele, Cory, Mose, y'all be easy and be blessed.